I was yelling at her and I was scaring her. It was awful because that's exactly how I didn't want to parent. I did a lot of learning about parenting stuff. I got certified as a parent effectiveness training teacher. I did so much stuff, and I realized that all this learning I was doing about how to respond to your kids was useless if you couldn't take care of your stress response.
Welcome, everyone. This is Ekaterina with Trust Me Mom. Today, I'd like to welcome to my show Hunter Clarke-Fields. She's an author, speaker, podcaster, and she also created a really cool mindful parenting course and teacher training program. Hunter, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Katrina. I'm happy to be here.
Wonderful. So, you've done so much in your life. You're a mom of two beautiful girls, and it sounds like this parenting journey launched you into doing the work you do right now. So, let's dive into your story. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you even became a coach, an author, and started doing the work you're doing right now?
Yeah, I mean, well, I didn't do it because I was naturally good at it or great at it or anything. I have no natural affinity with kids. In fact, it was completely the opposite. It was because I was failing and I was frustrated. Um, and I just was desperate for tools. So my daughter is a highly sensitive kiddo, and always has been, and I'm a highly sensitive person, and I had discovered mindfulness a long time ago and had been reading about it and had done some practice before she was born. But then when she turned around two-ish, like 18 months, it's interesting because it's like that's like the time when she's like the cutest, it's just like, so you just want to eat her up now. Look at those pictures. But that's when my temper started to really come out really big time. She, as a highly sensitive kid, she had some issues with the way I was responding to her, and I was yelling at her and I was scaring her, and it was awful because that's exactly how I didn't want to parent. That's how my father was with me. He had a really terrible temper, and I had specifically chosen to not yell, and yet here I was yelling. So it was really frustrating for me. And so I dove into learning. I did a lot of learning about parenting stuff. I got certified as a parent effectiveness training teacher. I did so much stuff, and I realized that all this learning I was doing about how to respond to your kids was useless if you couldn't take care of your stress response, if you were getting activated, if you're getting reactive, if you were starting to lose it, then everything you learned would go out the window. And I saw that pretty clearly with myself. And so I saw that the tools from the world of mindfulness really had to come in here, because before then we had just been assuming that parents could just perfectly do anything we chose to do, and that we were like a blank slate. And the truth is, we have a lot of healing to do, and we have a lot of practice to do to help us be less reactive, to give us the choice in how we want to respond to our kids, to actually be able to have to choose. And so that's where all of these tools from the world of mindfulness sort of came in, and that's what I did, is I brought together the tools of mindfulness to help us be less reactive with the communication skills that are like learning another language. So
Absolutely, I agree with you. And I definitely find myself in the same boat where I thought it will be all natural. And there are so many skills you have to learn as a parent, right?
yeah. I mean, I was just working on this with the cohort of the mindful parenting teacher training, and we were working on the practice of reflective listening. And it's so interesting, because it's just our language, often our native language, is to dismiss the problem or to jump in and solve the problem, or to threaten if the problem is getting bigger and not going away. And when we practice a new tool, like a tool of reflective listening, it's like kind of like practicing another language, where we're a little weird and awkward with it at first, and we sound a little strange, but it really is to change our language from something that's less skillful to more skillful, to put that work in. Whenever you can put that work in, it pays dividends down the line like crazy.
Nice. So now people can say I'm bilingual because I speak
Yeah.
English and reflective listening.
Yeah, definitely.
How did you find energy and time to learn all the skills? Because so many parents could be desperate, but physically they may not even able to do it. How did you find that energy and time and perseverance to keep learning and applying new skills in your life?
Well, I had a lot of support in my life. I was staying home with my kids. I had been teaching and I wasn't happy as a teacher, so I was happy to stay home with my kids, and we had the resources to we hired a we had a someone who came as a mother's helper. Oh my god, we paid her $5 an hour. It's crazy to imagine that, because we were both there in the house, and I would say, "Here, I take my kid and put her in the ergo baby carrier and say, go for a walk." I would,
Yes.
so I had some time, and it wasn't like I had a ton of time, but I had some resources, and I find that when your time is really squeezed, you get so much done. You're just like, okay, I've got an hour and a half. I'm going to do these things, and you just like get it done. um,
Yes.
and also it was so important to me. It's interesting to think about, like, a lot of us as parents, you hear the saying like, "Oh, I'll die for my kids." But you die for your kids, but will you go back and try to understand your own childhood for your kids? Will you sit still for 3 minutes and be quiet for your kids, right? Like, these are the actual questions. Will you put your phone down, and and plug it in downstairs for your kids? Like, will you heal habits that are unskillful and hurting you for your kids? Those are the better questions to ask than, would I die for my kids? So it was definitely a combination of, I had some support and resources, and I had a lot of motivation, because this was the most important thing in my life to me.
Yeah, absolutely. I love how you let's transition to helping parents help themselves first. So, how they can heal their childhood traumas or recognize some of the patterns that they grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
And also, so I think you touched briefly on how parents should regulate themselves before they're trying to resolve a
Mm-hmm.
challenging situation or conflict with the child. So,
Yeah.
let's talk about some strategies for parents if they feel they're boiling, if they feel they're about to yell, if they feel their kids are not listening, and probably there are different strategies for younger kids versus older kids. So let's unpack it a little bit.
Kind of surprisingly, the strategies are fairly simple, except you can't remove yourself from a younger kid in the same way that you can from a older kid. Although, so I like to, well, to put a pin in that, I like to talk about, when we're talking about calming our reactivity, there's sort of two big ways to think about it. One is that we should work on building the muscle of non-reactivity. We should work on it in the long term. Meaning, like, if you send your kid to the Little League World Series, like a really crazy, tough, stressful moment, and you've never had them have a practice in their life, and you expect them to play ball, good luck with that, right? Like, we all know that's not going to work. Yet, we think, oh, if I can get just some strategies for those tough moments, then I'll implement them in the tough moments, everything will be just fine. It doesn't work so well. So it's actually much better to practice a little bit every day, right? To build a long term practice. So basically, what we're talking about is helping ourselves to be less reactive, helping ourselves to be able to pause and access our whole brain, rather than just react with the words that come to our mouth from our upbringing or our culture or whatever, which may not be so skillful. And so the long-term practices for this include a lot of the traditional mindfulness practices: putting your phone down, going for a mindful walk where you're feeling your footsteps, starting to practice maybe a 3-minute meditation where you're focusing on your breath and you're noticing your chaotic, crazy monkey mind, and the fact that you feel like you can't do this and you're failing, that we all feel, but you're still doing it, right? Like, you all of these traditional practices, they have been shown by scientific research to shrink the amygdala, which is the seat of the fight, flight, or freeze stress response in the brain, right, to actually make it less dense in gray matter. That's from fMRI studies. To actually grow denser the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of our brain that we want to be using, which takes it's a little slower. It's in charge of creativity and impulse control and verbal ability and problem solving, right? Like this is what we want to use. So all of these practices we can do in the long-term mindfulness practices are incredible to, if you can develop a little habit of getting a little bit of practice of sitting still and noticing yourself and feeling your feelings and noticing your crazy brain and breathing, that helps a lot. That's in
Mm-hmm.
the long term. In the short term, I talk about the 3 R's. So they come down to recognize what you're feeling, remove yourself if you're able, and then use your resources. So recognize what you're feeling. This is name it to tame it. This is also goes back to some research with fMRI studies and lots of experiential research where when we recognize our feelings, when we acknowledge them or name them, whatever you want to say, when we say out loud something like, I'm feeling really frustrated, or I feel like I'm about to lose it, I'm, those things, rather than stuffing down our feelings, rather than pretending to be calm, rather than, faking it, like when we can acknowledge and recognize our feelings, it really takes down the temperature. And the fMRI studies show that the activity in the amygdala goes way down. So recognize what you're feeling. It's really great. It teaches your kids healthy emotional intelligence, helps the temperature go down for you. And it's also a bell of mindfulness to wake up and say, oh, I'm going down that path. I better do something. So what can you do about it? You can, if possible, remove yourself. This is where it kind of changes on the age. Although my second daughter was really young. She was in a crib at one point when I could feel myself like being like, I'm going to kill this child. And I put her, so I could feel myself getting so agitated. So I put her in her crib and then I left her room and I closed her door and I went into my room and I closed my door. And then I went out onto the little balcony and I closed that door. And then I was breathing and she was fine. She was safe. I took 3 minutes, 2 minutes, I don't know what it was. And I then used my third R, used my resources. So and sometimes that can also be a very skillful thing to model for your kids. Like, I need a minute to calm down. I'm going to come back. I need a break. I'm getting upset. I need a break. That can be really great. Imagine if you saw your kids say, I'm feeling really upset. I need a break. You'd be like,
Mm-hmm.
hallelujah, that's great, right? And I've seen that happen with clients. It's really cool. So, and then use your resources. So you can understand your nervous system is in going into fight, flight, or freeze. This is a nervous system response. This is a natural biological response to your body feeling under threat. So in order to use your whole brain, you've got to calm that nervous system. It's a biological response. You can use your biology to calm it down. I like extended exhales. They're a super simple way. They're cliche because they work, because each inhale is like a mini fight, flight, or freeze stress response. Each exhale is like a mini rest and relax response. So when you just do longer exhales and inhales, you're kind of forcing your body back into that
Mm-hmm.
state. Super simple. You can shake out your limbs. Like, this is like what dogs do when they're stressed, right? You see them shake out their whole bodies. They're shaking out. Stress is tension. Stress makes the muscles tighten in your body. And then when you shake out your arms and legs and all your muscles, like, that's great. This is the heart of this book that an incredible thinker, Robert Sapolsky, wrote, called "Why Zebras Don't Get Ulcers." This is why zebras don't get ulcers after they've been chased by crazy lionesses. And then like things like mantras, like, this is not an emergency, I'm helping my child. People have all kinds of things they do, to just, they splash water on their faces, all kinds of things. So recognize, remove yourself, use your resources.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's nice. And I think one of the occupational therapists that I spoke with recommended holding a cube of ice in your hand
Yeah.
or giving it to your
Ouch.
child.
I
Uh,
could see that ice being flung back in your face. Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, yeah, it depends on the child. So can we do a quick role play? I would like to clarify naming your emotion.
Hmm.
What would be a healthy response? Let's say I feel I'm boiling, I feel very agitated. So what should I literally tell to my child in this moment?
I feel like I'm boiling. I feel really agitated. I need a break. Be honest. The thing is, sometimes people are afraid, they want to protect their kids from their feelings, right? I don't want to put my feelings on my kids. That's what they say. But the truth is that your kid can feel what you're feeling. We are porous. We feel each other's feelings. We are very attuned emotionally. Lots of us are. And a lot of kids, like, they can feel that something's off anyway. And so if you say, I'm feeling like I need a little break, and you're really boiling inside, their BS meter is going to just go off like crazy, and they're not going to trust you. So
Mm-hmm.
just be honest about what you're feeling. If you feel, yeah, I would be honest about what you're feeling. If you feel like, I feel really angry at you right now and I feel like I want to kill you.
Yes, so you do
So
not say that.
this is when yeah, you protect your child. You just say, actually, that happened to me. So after I'd been practicing a lot, many years, my youngest daughter was like 9 or something. We had family movie night, and she was just, kids get hyped up at the end of the night, and she put herself to bed by this point. I thought, okay, I'm just gonna read my book here on the couch. I'm gonna ignore her, and she's gonna just leave me alone. And she was on the stairs, like nudging me and blah blah blah. And then she started laughing at me, and I was like, like, it was just this, like, 0 to like 150 in 2 seconds. I could feel this like rage come on. It was this whole trigger that I didn't know I had until that moment. But I was able to be enraged and angry somewhat skillfully, and that my poor library book, I like stood up from the couch. I said, I'm feeling very angry right now. I yelled it, and then I opened the door and I stomped out onto the driveway. I threw my library book onto the ground. And then I walked up and down the street for 15 minutes or however long it took for me to cool down. But I could still honestly say, like, she knew I wasn't going to say, I'm feeling a little upset, and she was going to believe me. I was really angry, and I said it honestly. I just didn't say, at you. I wasn't
Yes.
blameful. I just owned my own feelings. Does that make you see the difference?
Yes, yes, I love it because you're right. It's very hard to find the balance. And there's so many schools of thought about, yes, protect your feelings. We kind of need to be those serene moms, right? But on the other hand, I agree with you. Children feel it. And we need to model them healthy behavior. So the fact that you're giving people permission to express their feelings, but in a healthy way where you're not blaming the child, but focusing on I statements and
Mm-hmm.
then potentially hitting the book. In some cultures, they can break dishes. I actually always have a bad plate that I'm not infatuated with that I can potentially break, but I don't want to scare my family. But I broke dishes a couple times in my life when I was so angry. So I would be away from them, but smash it with all the passion. So I was looking to validate if it's okay or not, and it sounds like it was somewhat of a healthy strategy.
Yeah, your kids need to see, if you're all serene all the time, that's not going to help them, because they're going to be a normal human being with a full range of emotions. They need to see, how does a healthy, mature human being deal with that. You need to model that for them.
Yeah, yeah. Let's switch to neurodivergent kids, kids with different neurological conditions who may react in such strong way to really mundane things.
Mm-hmm.
So, for example, I know a lot of moms who have autistic children, and if something touches them, or let's say they perceive this as dirty and trash touched them as they walked by, they may freak out. So, how can parents react and help their children in this situation?
Well, it's really helpful in situations like this to understand who has a problem. And I talk about this in Raising Good Humans and in Mindful Parenting, and to differentiate from when you have a problem, when your child has a problem. Because when you have a problem, when your needs aren't being met, right, you want to solve your problem. But when your child has a problem, when your child gets dirty or your child has a boo boo or whatever it is, whatever size of the reaction is, it's still your child's problem. It's not your problem. Now, your kid having a big reaction kind of can tend to make it your problem. I imagine people thinking that, but it is helpful to understand and to get into the mindset of, okay, my child is having a problem. This is not my problem. And why saying this is not my problem is helpful, because then we can be we can take care of ourselves to just be the serene, if we can summon it, the grounded one, the one who is solid and steady, and a helper and a listener for this person who has a problem, for our kid who has a problem. So if your kid touches a garbage can and they freak out and they feel all disgusted, you don't need to freak out too. Hopefully you don't. It may be upsetting, and then you might need to take care of yourself and take care of your feelings, name your feelings, all those things. But then you're the helper. So how do we help someone who has a problem? We listen, we validate, we reflectively, this is what we were working on today in the course, reflectively listen, right? We validate their feelings. Oh, yucky, you don't like that. That feels terrible to have touched that garbage can. Yeah, it does. And blah, 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 blah. Okay. If I can help, I can. If I have a wipe, I'll give it to you, whatever. You can be a helper. But the point is not, when our kids have big reactions to things, is to not, it doesn't help them. So we kind of have to walk this middle path, right? We don't want to like get in and be like, oh, this is terrible. Oh my God. Like, I'm feeling your feelings with you, right? Like, and exacerbate it. We don't want to dismiss the problem on the other end of the spectrum and say, that's no big deal. It's just you touch a garbage can, get over it, kid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Even though you might feel that way. Um, you know, just as if a friend was upset about something to you, you would say, oh man, that's really upsetting for you. I could see that. Yeah, what can I do to help? Right. Like, but not taking it on as your problem, but when you can come from it from the place of not my problem, it's like, oh yeah, I see that you're really upset. Like, I'm steady, I'm cool here, I'm here for you if you need anything. But that gives our kids like a grounding, which is really helpful when they have big feelings. We certainly don't want to dismiss the feelings. That doesn't help at all. Like, no big deal, or get over it. Or you see this in a different level in infants and toddlers all the time. Like, oh, you're okay, you're okay, you're
Mm-hmm.
okay,
Yes.
and that doesn't make any sense. Like, no, they're actually upset. Like, we can acknowledge those feelings, and we can recognize those feelings, and oftentimes it makes kids feel more upset, or they get more dramatic and more more
Mm-hmm.
frustrated if you can't just acknowledge what they're saying. Like, to have a problem dismissed means like, you're not seeing me, you're not hearing me. And really, whenever our kids come to us with a problem, they are wanting to be seen and heard and acknowledged. So let's acknowledge their feelings and acknowledge the problem, and show them the respect that we want them to give to us. Like, listen to them in the same respectful way we would want them to listen to us.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. What if we take this example to an extreme, and a child starts washing hands excessively to
Mm.
the point where they're starting to bleed? And
Mm.
these are real examples that I have. So how would you handle that? Where on one hand, a parent can recognize that yes, it feels unpleasant. Child starts solving the problem by actually hurting themselves, where they wash hands 10 times and bleed.
Well, probably by this point, they're going to consult with an expert on this problem. And that expert is probably going to have talked to their child about this, and they'll probably have a little bit more understanding about this. I can relate in some ways because, and I'm not an expert on OCD, but I have a daughter who has a chronic pain condition, and she feels she is her body is giving her a lot more pain from smaller things than other people are experiencing. And one of the things that has to happen for her is in order to live a healthy and full life is that she has to do things despite the fact that it hurts. So she does physical training and things like that. Whereas if she just stopped moving because it hurts, she would probably be in a wheelchair because it
Mm-hmm.
hurts so much. For a while, it hurt so much to walk down a street, and she was using a cane, etc. So to to be in a situation with your kid where you both understand this feels so uncomfortable and you want to do this, like for my daughter, she wanted to rest. For this child, you want to like keep washing your hands, like that feels like the intuitive right thing to do right now.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we know that it isn't. And so we have to then come alongside of our child and try to help them. And I've always found that you have to kind of be on your kids' team. You have to come alongside them in order for them to understand and them to make the choice from intrinsic motivation, from your support, rather than maybe forcing them not to do it is always the better way to do it if you can, to help them make the healthiest choice for them. But I have to just have a lot of empathy for parents who are going through that, because that's incredibly hard to deal with. And the kid feels like this is what I have to do, what I should do, and they have to go against that instinct, and that's incredibly hard for them to do when they don't have a fully developed prefrontal cortex.
Right, right. And let's talk a little bit more about how parents can allow children to fail at small things to teach them resilience for later life. Because if your child has, let's say, chronic pain condition or a certain disability or something where you got used to helping or recognize they may need a little bit more support than typical kids,
Mm-hmm.
then you want to protect them.
Mm-hmm.
And you develop that habit, and it's very hard to let the reins loose, kind of loosen the grip, and let the child face consequences of pain. So, do you have any advice? I understand that's logical and healthy, but how can parents actually do it?
Yeah, it is really hard to sort of hold boundaries when you have a kid who may be feeling pain or suffering. Um, that's hard. It's incredibly hard, and we've done it sometimes, and sometimes we haven't. And it's a practice of a conversation and listening with my daughter. This all happened for my daughter when she was 14 and up. So thinking about this idea of the failing or having unpleasant results or uncomfortable consequences of your actions, that has to start really early. And it's like when our kids are infants, you know they have something that's their problem, but we are really the ones who are solving all of their problems, right? And things like that.
Right.
And yet pretty quickly they they have things they want to do, and etc., that they're going to come up against boundaries that they can't, that are going to be uncomfortable. I think it's really important for us to have these places where our kids are meeting these boundaries, and they're meeting that sense of I'm upset, and that, yeah, you're upset right now, and I see that, and you know what, I'm here for you if you need me. And also, like, life will go on, right? Like, you're not going to get your every need met. It's also helpful for them to um I don't know, be able to do things like in play where they're failing. We gave my daughter a toolkit when she was 6 years old. It had like a handheld, a crank screwdriver, had a little saw, handheld saw, measuring tape, and a little hammer and nails and things like that. And she made all kinds of things, and some things worked out and some things didn't work out, right? Um, I think it's just really through the process of inviting them to engage with the world and having everything in the world work out for you, that that this can happen, where we're giving them plenty of non-open time for free play that doesn't involve screens so that they can create things and forts and ships out of boxes and all those different things, and so they can see how things work out or don't work, right. We can see how when they cut open their doll, sometimes it doesn't go back together, it ruins the whole thing. um, and it's also helpful for us to talk about our own failures.
Mm-hmm.
I tried to do this thing and it didn't work out, and I was really frustrated. Like, in my house at the dinner table, we talk about roses, thorns, and buds. And so it's important to talk about the things that were thorns and frustrations. And it's nice to have a mode to talk about that. But I think it's a matter of engaging with the world, like when my kids have to ask someone in the community for something, right? Like, they both did scouting, they both had to do different things. Okay, well, here's that person's contact information. Give them a call. You know,
Mm-hmm.
oh, will you do it, or will you go pay for this thing I want to buy at the store? No, I'm sorry. No, you can pay for it at the store. And oh, but I don't want to. It's so uncomfortable. I don't want to. Oh, sorry, honey. If you want to get this thing, you got to at least go buy it, right? Like, I'm sorry.
Right.
So just giving them opportunities to engage in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely.
I'd love to ask you. You said earlier that you're a little bit of a hovering. Sometimes you feel
Yes.
like you're hovering, a little bit of a helicopter parent. As I was talking about these ideas of like letting your kid engage with the world, can you think of ways that you could let them engage with the world without you there?
Yes, I think for me personally, it's very hard. Maybe going back to our insecurities and childhood traumas, where I
Mm-hmm.
wish I was protected more by my
Mm.
parents. So, for example, the way I learned to swim, my dad threw me in a very
Oh
dangerous
no.
river
Oh no.
without any inflatables. And my sister literally saved my life because she was younger and she still had the inflatables on her.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
almost drowned. The way they taught me to make purchases at the store, I had to cross really dangerous road with many lanes, with bad traffic. I didn't know the measurement system, grams, pounds, etc. And I was scared that somebody can cheat me when I needed to weigh a certain amount of. So I remember so much stress the way I learned to experience life. And I don't know if I was old enough even for these experiences and learnings. That's
Maybe
where
not
I.
enough scaffolding or not enough. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. And now I'm trying to overprotect my child, and I've recognized that I'm overdoing it. And how can again, I need to work on my own insecurities and childhood traumas
Mm-hmm.
to create that healthy balance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I can see that in a lot of people. You feel worried about that. At the end of I live in a cul-de-sac. At the end of the cul-de-sac, where it meets a bigger street, the cars can come pretty fast.
Mm-hmm.
And so to cross that street, it was like we're holding hands. And first, it's like, when do you think we can cross? What do you think? Right? First, of course, it's like, you're just doing. And then you ask them, when do you think we can cross? Oh, okay, let's see. But I see a car there. Let's watch out. So you're teaching them. Okay, do you want to tell me when you think you can cross, like when it became time to do that? Okay, you tell me. Tell me when we should cross. You could be on the lookout. And then eventually, so the idea with all of these life skills is that, I wanted my kids to be able to cross that big street and go to the community event by themselves. But I had to teach them how to get there, right? Like, I wanted them to feel safe. And if something was going to happen, like, these are the things you would do. What is my phone number? I want you to memorize it. And so to this day, my phone number is still the only phone number that they have memorized, because now they have cell phones, but like, they're like, oh yeah, da 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 da, right? So yeah, we need to teach those life skills as we go along. It's really, really important. That scaffolding. I
Absolutely.
I can imagine that would be hard in your
Yeah.
situation. I'm sorry that was sounds not so fun to. be thrown into the deep end like that, literally.
But it sounds like for our generation across many countries, I grew up in Russia, my husband is from the US, parents did not watch over kids as much for,
No,
and I don't know if safety changed or parents now are trying to protect. And also with social media, so the physical world and virtual world, the dynamic changes with every generation.
hmm,
So I can see a lot of my friends became overprotective parents and very cautious about scheduling a play date and controlling everything. And I see people are not as diligent paying attention what's going on in the virtual world versus real world. And that could
sure,
be a
yeah.
new problem where kids are given all the freedoms with their devices and who knows how they interact online.
That's where the child predators are. Everyone's worried about child predators. They're online. They're
Yes.
not, they're not. There's an amazing statistic. I had Lenore Skenazy on the podcast a couple times, but she shared some statistic, and I'll probably get it a little bit wrong, but like how long it would take if you left your kid out like on a New York City street before they were abducted. And statistically, it's like 43,000 years. Like,
Yeah.
it's like it's so improbable that lightning would strike many times before your kid would be abducted. It's but yeah, they are online. That's where the dangers are. We do need to get our kids into the real physical world again, as we need to get ourselves back into the real physical world, and to make that world again engaging.
Yes, yes, for sure. So you mentioned one of these interesting guests. What other guests really stood out to you? You interviewed over 500 people, I believe, at this point, or had over
Yeah.
500 episodes, probably even more. So, can you think about some that really stood out and turned your world upside down in a good way?
Yeah, I think Lenore Skenazy was one of those. I really, really enjoyed talking to her. Of course, it was amazing to talk to Gabor Maté a couple times. He kind of did some analysis on me on one episode, which was pretty interesting. It got pretty intense. I really liked talking to Bethany Saltman, who wrote a beautiful book about attachment and really showing that attachment is not at all about whether how you sleep with your kid or whether you carry them or where they sleep at night. It does not have anything to do with that, but it really is all about how you as a parent process feelings. It's so interesting, and it really goes back to that idea of mindfully feeling and processing your feelings. It's really interesting, and being present. um, yeah, it's been really interesting throughout the years to have done this. It's been over 10 years now I've been doing the Mindful Mama podcast, and
Wow.
there's so many amazing conversations that I feel so grateful to have had, and people I've met that I've become friends with, which is really exciting. And of course, anyone can listen back to all the episodes with Carla Naumberg, who is kind of like, she's been on maybe 4 or 5 times, and we just had a lot of fun every time she's on. Those are fun too, but yeah, it's been a joy, as you know.
Yes, it's really enriching. You gain so much wisdom from each conversation and it stays with you, especially stories.
Yeah, that's
So,
true.
can you tell us more about your books and where can people find you?
Sure. It's the whole Raising Good Humans collection at this point. Raising Good Humans is like the little book that could. And it was released in 2019 and has really resonated with people all around the world. I have it in 19 languages now, which is bananas.
Wow.
Um, and and it just keeps going. People really love Raising Good Humans, and I think it's because it's told from a very empathetic, practical point of view. And I think I'm good at translating all this information I learned from all these great experts and translating it into the kind of language people can speak. And then to do a lot of the exercises in Raising Good Humans, you can do the Raising Good Humans guided journal, which is really beautiful. And they did such a great job with it. And they have all these they have like rate yourself and these cute little like rating pages and all these different things. And then the Raising Good Humans every day was super fun to write. I really got to expand on everything that I wrote on in Raising Good Humans and go beyond that to things I wasn't able to touch on because it's 50 short chapters. So it's like literally like three-page chapters that you can just read right before you go to bed or when you wake up in the morning with really helpful exercises, because I'm always very practical about making it making it easy to make all these practices very, very simple. So yeah, and this one's small and fits in your pocket or
Oh, that's
your purse,
great.
maybe,
That's
not your
great.
pocket.
That's nice to have that journal and be able to reflect on your day and your behavior. That's amazing. And what I really like, Hunter, is that in one of the interviews with you that I've seen, you mentioned that you actually enjoyed teenage years of your daughters, which is so rare. And it could be because our parenting style is so challenging and may need so much correction that actually maybe it's normal to have good relationships with teens. So you're giving hope to other people to be able to have good relationship with their kids throughout different stages of life.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's completely a myth that your teen is going to absolutely hate you or that teen daughters are like, oh my gosh, good luck, you have teen. No, that's completely a myth. I mean, teens, yeah, they're going through adolescence. There's a lot of changes. There's certainly a lot of hormones. And so people feel or get sensitive and sometimes persnickety. But I think that the adolescent rebellion is a direct product of the way we had been parenting kids in the past, where with authoritarian parenting styles, the resentment builds and builds and builds. And then when kids have the power to let parents know that these aren't working for them, hit back or talk back, etc., that's what happens. It's really a lot of resentment into unskillful parenting techniques that were just unfortunately in the zeitgeist and still are still very much around in a lot of places. Things like threats and punishments, and this idea of the parents, demanding perfect obedience, it all goes back to like how we solve conflicts, right? So what I talk about in mindful parenting is the idea of like if you have a conflict and the parent is always pushing the solution down on the kid, it's always do as I say, then the kid feels resentment over time because of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in fact the exact reverse with the permissive parenting, where parents start to feel resentment if the kid is getting their way all the time. But it doesn't have to be either of these ways. Um, you can when we have a conflict and my needs aren't being met or your needs aren't being met, we can look at what's happening and how can we meet both of our needs, right?
Mm-hmm.
How can we get both how can we both meet our needs and talk about that. And it turns out like kids really like being part of the problem solving process. It gives them much more buy-in. We don't have to be so much the enforcer. And it makes for smoother sailing all along. So as we use, yes, less yelling, less threatening, our kids stop resenting these techniques so much, and they're more likely to listen to us when we practice listening to them. As we build that relationship, then we can problem solve together. It's funny because I remember meeting a family in my neighborhood when my second daughter was a baby, and I don't know, we had some conversation about parenting, and they said, oh yeah, we don't use timeouts. And I was like, oh, that's shocking. And like, I'm not going to let my kid just walk all over me. I remember thinking that. And lo and behold, I've never used a timeout ever. I've never grounded my kids. I've never had to. We just talk things through and figure out how to meet everyone's needs. And they still do chores and stuff like that. It's not like we don't have boundaries. We
Mm-hmm.
still hold boundaries, but we hold boundaries in a logical way um that's not meant to make them hurt or suffer. And, so yeah, you can't use my earbuds anymore if you're not putting them back where I need them. No, I'm sorry. I'm not going to let you borrow them anymore. Etc. Things like that. It's like, yeah, I feel so grateful about this because, and I'm yammering on, I know, but I feel so grateful about this because when Maggie was little, to go back to that, like when she was little and I was losing my temper and I was scaring her and I could see that I was damaging our relationship. And I was so scared about that because my own relationship with my father was damaged for many years because he's very loving in so many ways. He's really encouraging. He's really encouraging our creativity. He was really affectionate in a lot of ways, and he had a bad temper. And when I started to get 13, 14, he started to, say, do as I say, because I say it, and blah, 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 and just trying to kind of, I don't know. And I resented that enormously. We had such enormous fights. I mean, really, it was much more than a decade before I was able to, like, forgive him. I mean, I was in my late 20s.
Mm-hmm.
And it's still a challenging relationship in some ways, but it's when when parents get into the things with teenagers, a lot of times parents just kind of give up on teenagers. Oh, well, and it's terrible. Like, we're going to miss these years. And I feel so, so grateful that my kids didn't hate me as teenagers. We're close. We talk, we hang out. They ask me to go for walks and hikes with them. And that's the biggest joy of my life because these aren't relationships just for a short amount of time. They're a relationship for a lifetime, hopefully.
Right. Yes, definitely. So thank you for sharing your story about your dad as well as, but it was such a lesson for you where you recognized some of the patterns in your own parenting, but then you were able to change some of those patterns. So I want to applaud you for that. That's so inspirational for all of us. So do you have any other closing thoughts, ideas, any parting messages?
I guess I would just say, like, it's easy to listen to people like you and me talk and say, yeah, yeah, yeah. And some of these ideas are going to resonate and things like that. And then you get into situations with your kids, and it's so hard. Their kids are loud and messy, and their behaviors can be really obnoxious. And it's really, really hard, and we don't have enough support. I just want to say that this is all much easier said about than done. It's all really hard, but change can happen just bit by bit by bit. Like, just pick one thing and focus on that for a little while, and remember that um you can't give what you do not have, right? Like, if I squeeze an orange, I'm not getting pineapple juice out of the orange. If you want to be that supportive figure for your kids, that kind and loving figure for your kids, you have to be kind and loving, supportive to yourself first. So you got to cultivate inside what you want to express on the outside.
Mhm.
And that might be the most important first step.
That's very wise and a good reminder for all of us to learn to regulate yourself, recognize your own patterns, and then indeed become that orange or pineapple that you need to give to your child. So that's really good. Hunter, thank you so much. That was such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. It's been really a pleasure to talk to you. I've really, really enjoyed it. And thank you for everything you're doing here.